Hello, Bermuda, and welcome once again to This Week in Government. I'm Tarai Trott. This Week in Government aims to provide you with first-hand and insightful information from the key decision makers in government. We will offer the viewer engaging commentary about government initiatives, programs, policies, events, and activities, and how they affect the lives of Bermudians. Today, we are pleased to have with us Simone Romaine from the Department of Child and Family Services, also known as DCFS. Child and Family Services is focused on protecting the well-being of our children, our adults, and our families. Currently, the department is focused on a recruitment drive for their foster care program, and Simone is here to discuss with us this worthwhile initiative and much more. Simone, welcome to the program today.
Thank you, Tarai. Thank you for having me.
If I can start by focusing on your background and what you do day to day with the department. Tell us, what is it like for you? What's your role in the Department of Child and Family Services?
So I am a social worker with the foster care team. The Department of Child and Family Services consists of 5 different teams that social workers can work on. We have investigation. We have assessment and assessment team. We have foster care. We have family preservation. We also have Mirrors now falls under our umbrella as well, and we have residential treatment. So I am one of many social workers who works on a team, and my day-to-day basically is intervening on the lives of others and so advocating for the children that are on my caseload.
One perception could be that I'm aware of is that social workers are the ones who intervene if there's a problem with a child at home, perhaps. You knock on the door and you speak to the parent.
We do. It's not as simple as you may put it. What tends to happen is the department will receive referrals from community partners, from schools, from anyone in the community who has concern about the well-being of a child. This is then reported to our investigations team, and a worker will then go and investigate the allegation that's brought forth to us. Sometimes that allegation could result in it being unsubstantiated, meaning that they don't think that the allegation was true. If it is substantiated, it may require further intervention from our family preservation team, or it may require court intervention because it is that serious that the child's life is thought to be at risk.
It's a very wide-ranging work.
Very wide-ranging, yes. If
I can talk about the fact that you've been in this role for a number of years. What inspired you to pursue this line of work?
Well, my mother said that as a child, most people, children came home with animals or pets. I came home with children. I always had a child on my hip. I was very active in my church as a youth leader. I was a leader in my church as well. And so I just always wanted to help people. And this seemed just a natural progression for me to go into the field of social work.
Is it something you would recommend for others to pursue? Can anyone take up the mantle to pursue social work?
You know what? That's an interesting question, because I wouldn't recommend this profession for just anybody. It takes a special type of person to be a foster parent. A social worker. It's foster parent as well, but definitely a social worker. You have to have empathy. You have to be able to think outside the box. You have to be able to shift gears and be able to do multiple tasks at once. Our days don't look the same. It's very different. Monday does not look like Tuesday, and anything planned is liable to be canceled and substitute if an emergency arises. So it's a very complex job, but it's not for the faint at heart. It requires a lot of self-confidence. It requires a lot of thought, processing, and problem solving. And being able to do that in a very non-judgmental way, because we are dealing with people.
And May is being celebrated as Foster Care Month, which is going to be huge for your department. And there are some activities going on, I understand, to promote the benefits of foster care, the foster care system. First of all, what is foster care for those who need a basic understanding?
So foster care is meant to be a short-term safe haven for a child in need. If a child is being removed from their parents, it's because the department and the courts feel that the child is at risk to substantial harm if they stayed in that family setting. The auspices of foster care is that the child will be removed for a short period of time and then reintegrated back to their home with the necessary resources in place to support the family and the parenting in being a suitable parent to the child. Not all the time it works that way. Sometimes children are left in foster care longer. Some children are born into foster care and age out of foster care. Some children have come into foster care for a very temporary short period of time, 3 to 6 months, and then going back home to their parents. So it varies, but it's meant to be ideally to be temporary.
And once the child is in foster care, can you explain, what measures are taken to ensure that the child is protected and their well-being is being looked after?
So all of our foster parents are vetted. So basically it is a process. You can't just raise your hand and say, I want to be a foster parent, and tomorrow you're assigned a child. It's not as cut and dry as that. There's an intake process. We have people come in and meet with our supervisor, Selena Simons. And if you are married or in a multi-generational home, everybody has to be a part of the decision. It's important because the child has to then enter that environment and must feel wanted by everybody involved. So if it's a husband and a wife, both have to be agreeable that this is something that they want to do. Once that decision is made that the whole family wants to proceed, the home is then vetted. Everyone in the home must be security checked. So we do police background checks. We also do child protection, on the Sex Offenders Act, the Child Abuse Registry. And so everybody is vetted in that way. The health department is included as well to ensure that the home is safe for children, or especially if it's an infant, that the necessary rails and gates and all of those things are in place to ensure the safety of the child. We also do what is called a home study, where we have a social worker who will go into the home and they will basically interview everybody in the family, ask you how you parented, just to ensure that the family is prepared for what comes with raising someone else's child, as well as sometimes that people have the, for lack of a better word, mental stamina to endure this process, because it's difficult. You have a child that comes into your home for a period of time. Like I said, it could range anywhere from a day to 18 years, depending on the situation. And sometimes, there's an attachment that happens if you're raising a child as it was your own. And so the parent may or may not come back, and you have to be prepared for that mentally. And so you have to look at the family as a unit to make sure that, even though that's not something anybody really prepares for, that people are able to understand that it's a possibility that that can happen.
It's interesting you mentioned that fact, that if you pointed that out, that not raising someone else's child, it's not easy. A complete stranger to take into your home. It is, and you have to make that child feel as comfortable as possible. The department supports that. Every foster family that has a child in their home has a social worker assigned and a social worker assistant. And basically, as the social worker, we support the family in the integration of the child into the family. We also provide support in terms of counseling. We support the children with their extracurricular activities. We provide family counseling if needed to help the integration. And we just overall just support the family and the child as they go through this transitional time. How many children are in our foster care system here?
We have approximately 70 children who are currently in foster care. However, Tarai, that number would be much higher if we had the appropriate foster placements for our children. At this point in time, we probably have about 10 children that are in need of a placement, but we don't have the foster placement to put them in. And so these children may be in a home that is less than satisfactory, and the workers of our family preservation team are working diligently with the families to keep the children safe. But in actuality, it would probably be best if those children were removed, but we have nowhere to put them.
Is there a capacity for those who are unable to become foster parents to somehow still help?
It is. We have several capacities. At this point in time, we're exploring a lot of out-of-the-box type thinking. We need respite providers. So a respite provider would be a family that says, you know what, I want to help. I have a spare room. My son's going off to college, but I don't want to be a full-time parent. But you know what? I'll do weekends. I'll be willing to do weekends. I'll be willing to take a child every other weekend, or I'll be willing to take a child when a foster parent, sometimes foster parents go on vacations that the children can't go on, or, you know, they may have to do something that's during the school time and they don't want to take the child out of school. Or for any reason, sickness with another family member, they may need to accompany them. And we need somewhere for that child to go. And so we do have respite providers who will have those children for a short period of time. Normally, these are people who have built a relationship with that child. And most of our foster children have regular respite providers who they go to, almost like a auntie in the community that they go to when the foster parent needs the support. And so we do have those people. We also, even people who just want to be a grandparent for the day. This is something we often talk about. Sometimes our foster families are single parents, or they don't have extended family to support them. And that foster child can benefit from a granny, just having a grandmother who could pick them up from school in the afternoon and spend a couple of hours with them and then usher them back to the foster parent. So there are many different capacities that we are willing to explore with the right person.
And briefly, you may have already mentioned it, but foster parents also get support.
So we do offer a stipend. They do receive a monthly stipend to cover the children's basic needs, but we provide any additional support. So if the foster parent is finding that it's difficult dealing with the child's behavior, we will have services to support that foster parent, whether it be in the home or play therapy or family therapy to help with the adjustment period. We will provide that, yes.
Okay. Also, can you tell us, Simone, what is the overall goal of our foster care system?
Again, I say it's to be a safe haven for children who are displaced. When our children come into foster care, normally it's nothing that they've done wrong. Unfortunately, the adults in their lives have made bad decisions or have made reckless and neglectful decisions that has caused the child to be removed. And so the goal of foster care is to support that child emotionally and physically while they deal with this situation that they have no control over. So we do our best to just support the child and supporting the family as well, not just the foster family, but we also support the biological family, because we do have parents that are trying to get their children back. And so we support them in getting services, so counseling that they may need, support services with financial assistance or parenting courses, or for some of them is drug treatment. We will make those referrals to those agencies. We don't do it ourselves, but we do make those referrals. So we're multi-tiered in foster care. We're not just working with the child, we're working with the foster parents, and we're working with the biological families in the best interest of the child.
I'm wondering, what does the ideal foster care parent look like?
You kind of, you think ideally two-parent household, right? You would want a two-parent home for a child, especially if you have a foster child who has never experienced a two-parent household. That would be ideal in my mind for what you would want. But we also know that there are some amazing single parents, whether it be male or female, because we do have, we actually have a grandfather who came on board to be a foster parent, or kinship parent is what we call them, if it's family, for his granddaughter. And so basically we need people who are genuine about what they're doing and really just want to make life better for a child. Have to have some understanding. Communication skills will be strong. A lot of empathy to understand the challenges that come with our children. I often tell people that for children in foster care have experienced trauma in one way or the other. That trauma could be in vitro because they've witnessed in vitro domestic violence or drug abuse by their parent in vitro. It could be just the removal of a child even at birth. When a child's in vitro, we are told that they become accustomed to the voices that they hear around them when they're in the womb. Well, when a child is removed at birth, those voices are no more, or the voices that they hear are new because it's a new family that they've been placed with. So our children, and even young children, when they're removed from their biological parents and placed in another home, that's a form of trauma. It's a form of trauma. So our children come with trauma. And so we need people who are going to be sympathetic to that trauma, but also loving and looking to heal those children of that trauma. Now, are you going to heal them all? No. Is every day going to be a good day? Unfortunately not. But we need people who are willing to stick by the child and stick by this child to get them through this time. And whether it be a lifetime of 0 to 18 or a few months or a few years. So yeah, really just somebody who's just willing to just stay to the wicket and bat, you know? Somebody who's willing to go through this with a child.
What challenges do you face to recruit this ideal foster parent?
I think one of the most difficult thing is, especially for our teenagers, we have children in foster care who are lingering. Because once they turn 12, people's like, I don't want to deal with a teenager. And people have on the impression that children are removed because they're done something bad or they're delinquent. They're not. They're not. They're normally the victims of this situation too. And so I find that sometimes people think that if they take a foster child, they're taking a problem child, which is not the case. We have foster children who are excelling in school, who are honor roll students. We have student athletes. We have children who have won medals, who have, for sports and inter-school sports, have stood on the podium, but you would never know that they're foster children. They're living robust, lovely lives. You know, we have our graduation rates for our foster children is high. 90% of our children graduate from high school, if not more. Last year, we had 5 children exit the foster care system. All of them exited with their high school diplomas. So
amazing. These
kids, they're not getting into trouble. Yes, they have challenges, but their challenges are just a little different from what normal children will experience. The back talking as teenagers, that's universal. Temper tantrums as 2, that's universal. These children are going to do the same thing that quote unquote normal children in a normal home would do. They're just a little bit more challenged in the sense that your own children, you know the biology. You know when they're acting like their father and they're acting like their mother. You know, in this situation, you have no, sometimes if it's not a kinship placement, you have no point of reference. So those are some of the challenges. I think people also worry about getting attached. I think people worry about what happens if I get attached to this child and they're in my home for 5 years and then the parent comes back and says, I want my child and I have to give this child up. And I try to explain to people that it's not as cut and dry as that. Like, you can't just come back after being absent for 5 years and say, hey, I want my child back now. No, it's a process. And we also have to look at if that is in the best interest of the child. Has the parent let's say, for example, if it was an addict, has that parent been rehabilitated? You know, are they clean and sober? Do they have the financial means to now care for that child? What's going to be their support network to support them? Because if you're recovering as an addict, you need support for yourself. But are you in the right mental state to be a parent again while you're battling this? So it's other things that we look at. And reunification, and this is the sad part of my job, is reunification is not as often as we think. It doesn't happen. I've been in foster care team. This is my 6th year. And if I've done 3 reunifications, that's how many I've done. My caseload that I had when I started looks almost the same to the caseload that I have now. Children that have left my caseload, besides 3, have been because they aged out of the system. And so that's one of the challenges, is that this, you know, I tell foster parents, normally by the 6-month mark, I can kind of know, I would say, so foster parent, this one is going to be with you for a while. Because it's the first 6 months in foster care where you see if the parent is really going to make that effort to get that child back. That's my opinion, you know. But I find that even with being a foster parent, the transitional is the first 18 months. Those are the hardest. And I think that that's relationships in general, if you think about it. With any relationship, it's the honeymoon phase. And then it's the, oh, this is who you really are phase. Then it's the, I don't know if I want to deal with you phase. And then everybody gets into a routine. And I think the first 18 months of fostering are the hardest. And that's what I tell my foster parents. If you can get through the first 18 months, you're good.
I see.
You're good. Yeah.
Is there a particular success story you wish to share?
I mean, I just look at, I have one. So I can share this now because she's aged out. I actually was a kinship foster parent. We had a family member who was in need of somewhere to live, and her mom came to me and said, listen, I'm having a hard time. Would you take my daughter? And so I did. And, my daughter and my mother welcomed her into our home, and she lived with us for 4 years, from the age of 14 to 18. She just aged out last year. And when she first came to me, she attended Berkeley. And I'm not going to lie to her, I there were some days when the phone rang, it was that Berkeley number, I cringed because I'm like, what is this child done now? And we had our ups and downs. My daughter was 6 at the time, and I remember she was quite excited about having, her cousin come and live in our home. And like 3 weeks in, my daughter said, can she go back? I think I don't want to do this anymore. But last year, we had the opportunity to watch her walk across Berkeley stage and get her high school diploma. And my daughter was there, and, it was like, that's my sister, because we've developed that bond. And for me, she became my child, And so I think that their stories are common. We just don't hear them. We have a lot of children who go into a foster placement at infancy, and they're still that part of that family today. We do have foster placements that don't work out too. And that's life. We have relationships that don't work out, and I think that's life. But there's a lot of love that can be given. I think as a community, we are a loving community. We are an embracing community, and I think that there's a lot of people out there that will be amazing foster parents. But I think they're afraid of, what they hear, or that failure, because failures run faster. Bad stories run a lot faster than success stories. But there's a lot of us out there as former foster parents who stand proud of the accomplishments of the children that have been in our care. We have foster parents that basically retire where they did it for a lifetime. So this, and one thing that I do want to highlight, that is on the 21st of this month, we will be highlighting our foster parents. We do it yearly. We do a foster parent appreciation tea, and we highlight and just say thank you to the foster parents that have been they stand in the trenches with us and do this amazing work. And Tara, like I said, it's not for the weak at heart. It's not. It's a thankless job for us and them. And sometimes we don't get our flowers until the child is in their 20s. But we do it for the love of our community. We do it for the love of children and just wanting to make our island home a better place.
Interesting. Well, Simone, thank you so much for coming in today, and thank you so much for a very insightful conversation.
Thanks for having me.
And once again, thank you to Simone Romaine of the Department of Child and Family Services for her time today. You've been watching the latest episode of This Week in Government. I'm Tarai Trott. Thank you for watching.